Welcome back to Growing a Deeply Rooted Business, the podcast where intentional strategy meets sustainable systems.
We're so glad you're here. I'm Jess, your systems architect and Notion obsessed strategist who truly believes that systems are self-care.
And I'm Rachel, your email marketing mastermind. I'm all about building marketing ecosystems that actually work with the intentional strategy and, you guessed it, all things email at the heart of it.
Together, we're on a mission to help women entrepreneurs like you build businesses that are both profitable and purpose-driven. We know you want success, but not at the cost of your health, relationships, or personal joy.
Exactly. And that's why every episode we're diving into intentional marketing strategies, sustainable systems, and a really good launch strategy that doesn't leave you burned out.
Whether you're refining your operations, planning your next launch, or figuring out how to make your marketing work smarter, not harder, we've got you covered.
So grab your favorite drink, get cozy, and let's grow something deeply rooted together.
Hello, Rachel. So I had a moment last week where I took a glance in Notion into my Q4 plan and thought, wow, past Jess had a lot of dang confidence in future Jess. And I don't know who she thought she was, but she was definitely wrong.
Honestly, I had the exact same thing. I found a sticky note or like a written note that I had shoved somewhere in my desk from early 2025 with a project timeline that assumed that I had twice the amount of time and literally less, like half of the amount of like personal life that I currently have. And it literally felt like I was reading this like dream Rachel vision for myself. That is not who I am. So I feel like this is really one of those things that comes with planning because it's like we feel like we're making these really realistic plans, but we're actually like predicting a vision of the future that will arrive, maybe won't arrive. And that's kind of what we're getting into today.
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about planning fallacies and not the academic version, but the business owner in the wild version. We're going to be diving into all the things that we think and believe and get wrong with planning so that we can go into 2026 with a little more grounded. What do we always say? We say like expansive but realistic plans,
Yeah.
I think, or something like that, so that we can give ourselves a little break in 2026, not set us up for so much disappointment.
For real. Because the truth is, like, planning isn't going to be about like predicting the future. If you've heard any of our past episodes, you know the way we approach planning is a very intentional, very rooted in reality type plan that not only like creates space for you to live your life and have things come up, but it also kind of like creates space for progress and for intentional growth and all of those things. And I think once you understand that, your whole planning process and your whole like business really does become more peaceful, but most importantly, more profitable. So let's get into mindset shift number one, or fallacy number one, which is the illusion of knowing the future. And Jess and I, as we talked about at the beginning of this episode, humans are terrible at predicting and like forecasting the amount of energy and capacity that they really think they might be able to have. And a lot of times when people are making plans, and this is something that if you listen to our last episode where we're talking about, like, we're not setting 10 goals per quarter. We're talking about one core goal. And so when we're using our best days, like our most like energized days, the days that we've had 3x amount of coffee as those reference points, that's not reality. That's setting us up for failure because those people don't show up every day. That's the highlight reel of our planning. And we really want to make sure that we're rooting our planning process in certainty, not in this kind of illusion of maybe we're going to show up every day having 8 hours of sleep, having no back pain, and not forgetting that we need to go grocery shopping. So we're going to really making sure that like overconfident planning isn't creating a fragility in our system, but instead we're planning with rooted intentionality. So we create stability.
I think that one of the reasons why, or like the root cause behind why we try to overload ourselves, is because we're not taking the time to plan in the beginning, which sounds, I guess, it sounds like it doesn't make sense, but let me digress. So when you're not taking the time to like quarterly plan, like I will admit, I don't know if I like Q3 plan, And so the rest back half of the year is I felt behind because I never had like a plan going into it in the first place. So everything was coming from like a place of reaction and not a place of intention. So I think when you feel like you're behind, you're naturally going to try to be like, oh, this needs to happen today. It needs to happen yesterday. Like Rachel asked me when something's going to be finished. And I was like, oh, ideally it would have been done yesterday, So we end up like loading up our plate with like 15 different tasks because we're trying to like get to these like goals that we have by the end of the year. Like right now, the end of the year sprint is definitely happening. And my to-do list have been pretty freaking gnarly. So I took some time last week to create a AI chief of staff because I really wanted to get like I wanted to get like a realistic view of like what my actual capacity was each day. So I'm using it very intentionally where I'm checking in within the morning and like, this is my task list. I'm checking in in the afternoon. Like, this is what I actually got done. And I'm noticing that like, I'll have 12 things on my task list and I really can only handle like 2, 3, 4. So getting like a really realistic view of like how long things take to do in your business. And then also like what capacity you have to work on your business if you're working on a project, like around your client work. Rachel actually shared another thing with me, and it was a spreadsheet that had a breakdown of like all the different projects that like a typical business owner would complete. And it had next to it like how long it takes. Like,
Mhm.
do you know it takes you to do to write a newsletter? Do you know how long it takes you to deliver a service? This is something that like I talk to with my dietitians all the time is like, well, how long like when we're trying to figure out like pricing and they're like kind of pulling it out. I'm like, well, how long does it take for you to review the intake form and to like review the labs and to record the video and how much time are you spending going back and forth with the client? I think a lot of us, like when we're working by ourselves, like we forget to kind of like track those
Yeah.
things. And it's only now that I'm kind of moving into this where I'm beginning to outsource, where I really need to know, like, oh, I can't quote, a client how much money this project's going to take because I don't know what my true cost is going to be. And now I'm going to have to, like, I'm not just paying myself, I'm going to actually have to pay someone. So, like, knowing that becomes like all super important. So yeah, I think that knowing your true capacity, and maybe that's like homework for all of us, is like knowing what our true capacity is. How much actual time do you have or want to work in your business? And then starting to give yourself a more realistic idea by tracking your time, which I'm a big fan of, so that you get a clear idea of what your actual capacity is, so that when you sit down and plan, you can be super realistic. But I have a client, she's like the client that will come to me and with like this whole launch plan. And I'm like, okay, when you're gonna do this? And she's like, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. And like, I kind of just let her go because like, one, I know she's like the person that's gonna like sit down and like, she's gonna sprint for 3 weeks and then she's gonna like take a break. That's just like her work ability. But I checked in on her because we have a strategy session. She told me she wanted to launch in 2 weeks. I checked in with her because it's been a month or two. And I was like, how long did it actually take you? And she's like, oh, it took me 6 weeks. So it's like, it just kind of goes to show again, like how bad like all of us are at figuring out like how long things are actually going to take us.
Yeah, I have one thing to add because I know we're going to go off, but it is important to like understand like not that like we're amateur businesses as small businesses, but big corporations operate in like 3-year plans, 5-year plans. And when solopreneurs or small teams and like things like that are operating in a quarterly mindset, the rush and the urgency to fill up that like to do and those goals because we're not thinking long term in the sense of like, oh, well, I can execute. That's a 2027 plan. Like, I am helping a client with a migration right now. And I'm like, that's a 2027 migration. Like, that is not something we are going to be able to execute in this 2026 year, like coming up. And having those kind of like what Jess calls them is like the ideal parking lot, like having those parking lot spaces to say, this is not feasible to get done in this next year is really important because I think when you don't have that like acknowledgement that that's possible, you're ultimately like you're shooting yourself in the foot because you're really trying to get done way too much and something's going to fall flat. Jess, I'm not going to make you go through the project management or the capacity triangle or whatever it is.
I actually was just thinking about the triangle because I was having a conversation with another client, and he's like transitioning now into like what he calls like, I'm running a real whole business now. Because I think as entrepreneurs, small business owners, because we don't have to answer to like that big corporate whatever, we don't really have budgets, right? We don't have like a true budget. And that's kind of what I was speaking with him about. It was like, well, it's kind of hard to plan what we can actually do or what we want to do if we don't have budget, because like the limit does not exist.
Yeah.
But if you say like, oh, marketing department, you only have this much money to spend on your marketing, or I only have this much time to spend on this. I think putting those constraints, which is like the project management triangle, is like time, money, scope. And like, if you increase your scope, you're going to either have to increase the time you put in or the money that you're going to spend. But when you're not setting those budgets with yourself, because you're a small business owner and you can say, oh, I can just work 80-hour week that week and get it done, then like, you're going to like set yourself up for burnout over and over again. And you're not going to be able to like get a kind of realistic plan.
Yes. All right. Mindset shift number 2. You're up.
Just okay. This is like one of my favorite ones because, I'm a big like reflection person, but planning isn't just about the plan. I think that so many people avoid planning because it feels like you're not doing anything because you're just planning. And like, I have clients that are action takers and they just kind of want to like jump into like the action part versus like sitting there and taking the time to like think through the plan first. But the process of planning is really the value, not like the plan that you get. Because I'll be honest with you, like half the plans we make as a project manager, like gets thrown out, redesigned, reconstruction. Like my whole job for some of my clients is looking at everybody's tasks that we laid out and like completely moving around and shifting them around. Because as we've gotten deeper into the process, we've realized like this needs to change. But what the value of planning is that you're able to kind of like get it out on paper. You're kind of able to project different scenarios on paper before you actually like get into 2 weeks in and you realize this isn't going to work. And now you have to shift completely. You might be able to have that foresight if you're taking the time to like plan, reflect in the moment. But planning is a best case scenario. It's not like some sacred document that's going to change. It's going to be flexible.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the key is like it literally you have to be able to be adaptable, and like maybe that's what's terrifying to some business owners is because we created our businesses to have a little bit more control than we would like maybe in our 9 to 5s or in corporate. And this planning process is literally like you trusting the process of being adaptable, and like control means sometimes things change and that you have to be okay with that. And I think that that's really important to know that the depth that comes out of planning, and maybe it's just more confidence, maybe it's more of like stable footing whenever you say, okay, I do want to execute now. Like, okay, great. We had this plan that we had planned for Q2. Maybe we move it up a few months or so and we can execute in this sense now. So it's a lot deeper than just sitting down and like opening up an Excel doc and being like, done. I've got my month's plans and I've gotten this set and all that.
Well, and I think it's like the plan isn't like you create the plan and then like, okay, this is the plan. And then I just like sit there and execute it. It's like you have to revisit the plan for the plan to work. So like I messaged Rachel on Monday and I was like, hey, I know we plan to, we've been talking about Content Flow Studio. It's not ready. And also now is the time. It's not because of lack of planning, just because we've never done this before, so we couldn't plan. But anyway, it's not ready. And also we've reached the point in time where like, it doesn't make sense to launch that right now because that's not where our consumers like time is. So we're like, oh, okay. So we have this other thing that we had already planned on launching. So like, let's pull that forward. Let's push this forward. And that's kind of like what your plan is going to have to do. And that doesn't mean you're bad at planning. It just means like, that's business. That's life. Things are going to change.
That's showbiz.
That's showbiz, baby.
Okay. So then moving us into mindset shift number 3 is the strategy versus the action. This literally just happened to me. I completed my 2026 plans at the beginning of this month. I literally sat down, I put my my like noise canceling headphones on. I said, Henry's napping for an hour. I'm going to close my door and we're going to get this done. I got my most beautiful plan loaded, ready to go. And then I sat there and was like, okay, now what? And it's like the real strategy of planning comes with being able to take these kind of snapshots and like execute into them, right? Like, I think it's one of those things where I had to sit down and I had to literally get on a call, which I do these plans. We're talking about planning, like I plan for my clients, like, but for myself, I had to get on a call with my businessman, like mentor, and be like, what do I do? And she was like, this is how we have to break this into action. So it really is important to like know that plan isn't just the plan, like we just talked about, but it comes with the executing after the fact. So we really have to say, now, like move. Step one, like I'm literally have goals for January that I have to start breaking apart into like implementable like tasks and timelines and really reverse engineering it. And Jess and I were just talking about this, about how sometimes you have to take that picture and you work just more like work backwards. And so you can't have a plan without the action. You can't have that strategy without it because that's literally just, piece of paper. So I like to use this kind of a mantra for this stage because sometimes it's a little bit like you're in the stuck of like planning paralysis, which is what I was in. And is money loves speed. That's how we have to act here. And in some cases, because not all cases, is that messy, intentional action is how you discover how to like get yourself out of this intellectual plan that we have beautifully crafted. We've put into our calculators of goals and KPIs and all of that. And it gets you out of that like mind and puts you into the action. So I think this is really important. This is my biggest stuck point is getting myself out of here's my plan and now here's how do I put it into action. So clarity comes from the motion of this, not necessarily the practice of planning.
Yeah, and I think that just kind of brings me to our last point that I want to like wrap it up is like you're never going to come up with a perfect plan. So I think it's tempting to kind of get stuck in planning paralysis. And really that is going to kind of be the most expensive mistake that you make in your business is just not taking action, trying to wait for like the perfect outcome because perfectionism is really going to delay the impact and you're really not going to know like I think a lot of times in small business we're doing things for the first time. You're not going to know if something's going to work until you just take that first step. Like I have a lot of clients that are sitting here like, oh, I don't know if I should launch this or this or this, and I'm like, well, you're not going to know if it works until you like do it. So what's the quickest way that you can do like the 1.0 version of it and see if it actually works so that you can actually like get data and make it happen. Like Rachel and I were just talking about an offer that we're going to be coming out with you next week which is like our guide to planning. And we were like, what's the quickest way that we can get this out? We could record it. We could put it in a beautiful Kajabi course for you with all the branding and all of that. And maybe that will come. But like the quickest way is like, okay, we're going to get on a call. We know the guide. We know our flow. We're going to get on a call. We're going to do it together. We're going to share us going through it. And like that will still be helpful. It'll still be valuable. And once we get the feedback that like, hey, this is something you'll want from us, then we can like go to the 2.0 version and spruce it up. But I think a lot of people kind of get stuck at business is trying to find the perfect plan or trying to make like the perfect product or trying to get everything out. It's like, just get the 1.0 version out. And the businesses that kind of I look up to and I'm like, dang, how are they doing that? Like they're moving so fast because they're not sitting there overthinking themselves and they're not trying to put the most perfect version out. They're just taking action, getting feedback and then going, taking action, getting feedback and going. They're not like having like the most perfectly cured out annual plan ever, but they know they put the thought and time into being like, okay, in this month I need to be talking about this, and this month I need to be talking about this. And then they're just making it happen and not getting stuck in perfectionism. So
Yeah.
don't do that. Just
Don't do that. Some of the misconceptions, the stuck points, what are these limiting beliefs that we're talking about with planning? Let's do a really fast, quick and dirty recap is like, you literally can't predict the future. So we need to stop planning like we can, and we need to plan with realistic, rooted in reality plans, ones that are not established off of what we can achieve in our most efficient, best caffeinated selves, but how do we achieve this in our average? Like in our, maybe we get 2 hours of focus a week. Like, how do we accomplish these things in that sense? Next, the plan is not the whole point. The plan is the starting point. The clarity around what the plan gives us is the whole reason of doing this. So, really making sure that you're not just planning and then letting your plan set it and forget it and kind of think it's going to like do anything for your business goals, that you're using that as your starting point and you're taking those moments of clarity, those moments of direction, and running with that. And then if you're stuck in analysis paralysis when it comes to executing, action is your fastest teacher. That is going to be the method to getting things into reality versus just sitting there and being stuck intellectualizing everything and being like, the strategy, the strategy, the strategy, which brings us to our next point is that being stuck in perfectionism, it's the most expensive mistake that you can make in your business is by waiting for perfect. Messy action, messy intentional action is the key here because money loves speed. That is absolutely important.
So we want to know, which of these do you see yourself falling into the most in your business right now? Let us know. We can definitely kind of relate. And if you are ready to step into 2026, I'm like, what year is it even? With a plan that is rooted in reality, we want to offer you a chance to grab it below. We have a Rooted in Reality planning guide. It's a Notion workbook. It's going to take you through the exact process that Rachel and I use to plan in our business. We're also going to give you a recording of us utilizing it to plan the Deeply Rooted Business Podcast business plan for next year, because we're like a real business now. We're not just doing this podcast for free anymore or paying to do the podcast for free, but you'll get access to that as well.
In the guide, you're going to be able to walk away with what your quarterly priorities are, what your core focuses are. And then we're going to be introducing a little bit of the content side of things so that you can literally look at your picture, your annual picture, the full picture, and look at it and say, okay, Q1, month one, we're talking about this. Q2, month three, we're transitioning to this. That is the goal of how we're going to be planning this. So that you're going to get the literally step-by-step process into how we're doing that for ourselves, how to replicate it for your business. And yeah, rooted in reality. We're using all of these things we just talked about to make sure that you are set up in a way that is actually going to give you a structure and a direction for 2026. So hope you grab it. Let us know if you do, and we would love to hear your feedback.
All right. So I hope this episode lifted some pressure off of your shoulders with annual planning on the top of everyone's brain. Make sure you share this with a business friend who tends to overplan and overthink, and make sure that you follow, like, leave us a review. It helps us grow our little community here on the internet. And until next week,
We're rooting for you.